and good morning. Welcome into the program. It is Leap Day, 8:42 Eastern Panhandle Talk Time. Rob here, my co-host for today, Hannah Gefford. Good morning, Hannah.
Good morning, Rob.
And on the program today, big day in the 9 o'clock hour, it is David Welch time. He'll be in here to help break down the results of the Republican primaries in Michigan and Arizona. Preview Super Tuesday coming up, oddly enough, next Tuesday. That'll be in the 9 o'clock hour. In our first segment, how are things going with you and your mail service right now, and how will they go if a few of the sorting facilities that they're talking about, distribution centers, are closed down, contracted, moved elsewhere, or just eliminated in its entirety? What about Saturday service? What do you think about that? I have some people who can answer those questions and provide a lot more information as to what is going on with the U.S. Postal Service. They're on the telephone line with us right now from Baltimore. We've got Rich Shelley, Director of Organization with the APWU out of Baltimore, Local 181. Good morning, Rich. How are you?
Okay, good morning.
And Tom Dodge, who's on the Safety Committee and a truck driver for the U.S. Postal Service. Tom, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
How does, first off, let me know, how does Baltimore, what's going on in Baltimore, affect what's going on in the eastern panhandle of West Virginia, about an hour and a half away, mail service-wise? Gentlemen?
Rich, you want to take that? Sure. Well, what's happened most recently on November the 19th, Postal Service closed a sorting facility in Frederick, Maryland, and now all the mail that comes into Frederick from the surrounding areas is put on trucks. It's trucked to Baltimore, sorted in Baltimore, put back on trucks, and taken to Frederick. And mail volume is slow at this moment. You know, mail is, has dips and peaks throughout the year. Christmas is the biggest time, and it was a complete disaster around Christmas. They closed the plant. The Christmas season, mail started to pick up, and it was simply a disaster. By December the 13th, we had trucks backed around the building in Baltimore. There was mail sitting on trailers for 10-plus days. It was just not being processed. It couldn't be done. So I'll give you one example. A hardware store in Brunswick, Maryland, mailed out sale papers on December the 1st. The customers didn't get it until 2 days after the sale was over on December 27th.
Whoops.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Now, that's not regular first-class mail, is it?
Well, we are getting reports of first-class mail still being delayed also.
Indeed.
Yeah, I just had a phone call from a lady on Friday wanting the phone number for the plant manager at Baltimore, and I don't have that number, but she was telling me she had a certified letter that was just mailed in the last week that took 6 days to be delivered. That's first-class mail.
And this is because of the relocation of that Frederick sorting, or the closing of it, that sorting facility in Frederick. This is the reason for the delays?
That's correct. That's just one, plant being closed down. They want to close down Martinsburg and want to close down Cumberland. There's actually 12 nearby in Pennsylvania when they close. 252 out of 460 across the country. That's over half the sorting facilities. We've already seen what, kind of effect that has just by closing one down in Frederick. If they do what they are intending to do, it'll be a complete disaster for the Postal Service.
Is the idea to close these facilities to save money?
Well, they own the building at Tilco. They now have transportation costs getting it from Hagerstown and Frederick down to Baltimore every day and back out. As far as we can tell, we don't, they had to spend more money on trailer rentals because they didn't have enough space. They had to buy parking permits to park these trailers outside of Baltimore because Baltimore City doesn't allow trailer parking on the outside streets. I don't see how they're saving any money at all.
It's my understanding that part of the financial problem the post office is having is that they have been, by law, having to prepay pension liabilities. And they seem to be the only industry in the country that is forced to do that.
That's correct. And the question is, it's a simple thing. Why doesn't Congress at least put that on hold for the next couple of years until they can sort this all out and do something about the Postal Service? There's not a business in the whole country, like you said, that's been forced to do that. For prepaying for the next 75 years and 10 years. It's not like we didn't already have money going into our retirement and health care, but this is an overpayment. And there's now between two independent audits
yeah,
by independent companies have done audits, and the overpayments between $50 and $75 billion extra already in there.
Do you see this as going to be detrimental to other businesses? the closing of these facilities?
Businesses. You know, companies that put sale flyers out before Christmas bought extra inventory, and then the sale flyers come out after Christmas, and they're stuck with all this inventory. You know, Christmas is a big time of year for sales, and what's the company supposed to do with all this stuff? You know, this has affected private individuals, too. You know, citizens of this area, their bills are being paid late. You know, they sent their payment in 2 weeks in advance.
Whoa.
But, you know, for credit card companies, it's gotten there late. Their mortgage payments, their payments on their cars. I'm sure there's some people that probably had their cars repossessed. Some people, you know, the things are still on edge right now. Some people may have even lost their houses over this. And, you know, you call up your credit card company and talk to them about it. Well, they hear that story all the time. You know, the check is in the mail, and it's not your fault that they didn't get there in time.
Gentlemen,
you know, the Postal Service has actually done this to the citizens.
You both work out of Baltimore, and you mentioned the fact that around Christmas trucks were backed up. What is it like now? Is it calmed down some now that we're in a bit of a lull with mail?
It's definitely gotten better, but it's not to the point where mail's still not being delayed. We're not quite sure what's going on there, but they've done things to kind of hide things. I'll just let it go at that.
What does that mean?
Well, we know there's mail sitting out there in different places that's been delayed, and they're sending it to, for instance, a lot of mail's been sent down to Suburban down in southern Maryland instead of to the Baltimore plant. Try to make it look like there's not a problem anymore.
Is this something that's unique to Maryland, or is it going on all throughout the country?
Well, actually, this has already happened in Lima, Ohio. The Office of the Inspector General this past year did an investigation. They found that mail in Lima, Ohio, after they closed down the plant there, was delayed over 136%.
I know. I can tell you, personal experience, Christmas, it took us 8 days to get something from, actually, to heck with that, it took 12 days to get something. Once it was in the New York City sorting facility to get it to Frederick, Maryland for a Christmas present. It arrived January the 2nd or 3rd, I think, for Christmas.
Well, I don't want to one-up you on that, but I sent my daughter a present, and I thought it was lost in the mail, but she did not get it until mid-February. When
did you mail it?
I mailed it before Christmas.
Worst case example I've seen is a Christmas card, and I have that documented. It's stamped on the outside of the envelope, you know, cancellation date, December 12th. It didn't arrive to the 9th of February.
That's a card, first-class mail card.
First-class letter, right.
Yeah. Are they putting on more people to sort mail in the Baltimore sorting facility?
Well, actually, this is Rich. Actually, that is a point that needs to be made. The Postmaster General, as part of his plan, is calling for the reduction of over 100,000 jobs, and yet, as Director of Organization, I do orientation for new employees on behalf of the union, and just yesterday they brought 13, and since May we've probably hired 150 workers in Baltimore.
Gotta love it.
150 workers, and how is that less expensive than having a sorting facility open?
Well, you tell me.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't make sense.
Well, who's making these decisions, Rich?
Well, it goes to the Postmaster General, and we don't know why he's coming up with this plan. It's basically a plan that's going to set the Postal Service up for complete failure. You can't reduce service, you can't reduce service standards, and expect that to help the business. And more importantly, the highest mail volumes ever recorded. This is one of the myths, that the Postal Service is irrelevant in light of the Internet. The highest mail volumes ever recorded was 2006, 2005, and 2007, respectively, right before the recession. So you reduce all this capacity, your sorting capacity by half, and the economy picks up. What's going to happen then? An excuse for privatization because we don't have the capacity to handle all this stuff. Package volume this Christmas was up 7% over last Christmas.
There are a number of people who are calling for the end of Saturday mail. What's your best argument for keeping mail on Saturday?
Well, I would say, first of all, a lot of Americans, like myself and other members of my family, we get medicine in the mail, and we count on that stuff to be timely delivered. And the Postal Service hits 150 million addresses every day, 6 days a week. They can be counted on to show up every day. We have other, time-sensitive material, and people, I think the American people expect their mail on Saturday, and they're not going to be happy when it doesn't get there.
Rich Shelley and Tom Dodge are joining us here from the U.S. Postal Service out of the Baltimore area on Talk Radio WRNR's Eastern Panhandle Talk. So, gentlemen, what's the solution here? What options do you guys have to fix this?
Well, go ahead.
Well, a lot of this has been self-inflicted. 2 years ago, they took every stamp machine out of every post office, over 30,000 post offices across the whole country, and made it hard for you to go out and buy stamps. Sure, you can go down the street to the grocery store and buy a whole book, but you just can't buy one stamp. A lot of post offices have hours where they're open 24 hours a day. You can still go to the post office and mail something. So the situation is you can't go in there and buy a stamp. So you go down 2 miles down the road to buy a book at a grocery store, but you can't mail it there. So then you got to come clear back to, actually put your letter in the mail. We've become very customer unfriendly. We've cut hours back in the mornings. A lot of them used to open at 8, now open at 10. They've closed for an hour for lunch. A lot of this is intentional. We feel they're intentionally trying to put the post office out of business.
Who is they?
Turn this around and make it customer friendly again. All the letter carriers will tell you the same thing. They've made it hard for us to do our job and take care of our customers.
Who's the they?
Who's trying to put you...
Well, this is all coming from the Postmaster General of the United States.
What's his motivation, though? Why would he try to put the Postal Service out of business?
I'll tell you why. Because this is a step towards privatization. There are members of Congress in the House of Representatives and in the Senate who get large contributions from companies that would love to take this over. The Postal Service is self-sustaining. It takes no tax dollars. It provides good jobs to communities all across America. And there are people who can't stand the fact that we don't operate for a profit. And that's money to be made to make rich people richer if the Postal Service is privatized. And the Postal Service belongs to the American people. It costs the taxpayer nothing. It's one of the few things in government that doesn't cost the taxpayer anything. We're just here to serve the people, and that's what postal workers do every day.
Well, you say it doesn't cost the taxpayer anything, but isn't there something about an $8 billion deficit with the Postal Service budget or something to that effect?
Well, that's all the result of having to pay $5 billion every year for the last 4 years to pre-fund retiree health care costs 75 years into the future. We're being required to put money away for future postal employees who haven't even been born yet. It's insane. It's ridiculous. Our pension funds are already overfunded. The OIG just came out with a report a couple of weeks ago that if we did nothing, if we put no money in from here, it would be fully funded for 21 years into the future. So why are we being required to continue to put this money away when it's taken right out of our revenue stream that we could be using for operating costs? And the fact is, if that law wasn't in place now, the Postal Service in the first fiscal quarter of 2012 made a $200 million profit.
Here's an argument you might want to use on some of the Congress people. If you do not have the Postal Service, you don't have franking privileges. They won't be able to send their stuff out for free to the American people.
And that is true. That is a benefit that they have.
Yeah, I don't know. I bet most of our listeners don't know that. But that is correct.
But
the franking privileges that elected officials have. Among the many benefits they have that we don't includes free mail service out of their offices. Yeah. So this is essentially what you're saying is the Postal Service is healthy. The bleeding of cash that we keep hearing about on the news reports is an accounting I don't know what you'd call it, an accounting myth.
Right. It's a phony financial crisis. It's a way to pull off the biggest swindle in American history, the theft of an entire government institution from the people.
Yeah, it's not going to take a taxpayer bailout to save the Postal Service. All we have to do is get a little bit of that money back that they've overpaid into a retirement and use that money. That would fix it. And the point is just pointed out here, it's a $70 billion a year industry, and nobody's making a profit off of this. That's what the motive is behind all this. And it's a simple thing. Congress, we've known this overpayment for at least a couple years now. All they had to do was stop the overpayment, and the post office would have stabilized. But why hasn't Congress done this?
Well, just historically, I think people should remember that when our country began, one of the agencies that the founding fathers thought was absolutely necessary for our new country was the post office.
Well, your listeners may not be aware, but they're actually trying to close the original Ben Franklin post office down in Philadelphia.
Disgraceful.
That's where the whole thing started at, the historical building. It's an amazing place. If you ever get a chance to get up there and do a tour.
You been there, Hal?
And nothing seems to be sacred with these people.
Gentlemen, is this is the last couple of years is the first we're kind of really hearing about this pension issue. Is this a recent change, or has it been like this from the beginning? If it has been, then why are we just hearing about it now?
Well, in 2006, there was a law passed called the Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act, and it actually did not enhance the Postal Service's finances. That's the law that requires this pre-funding of health care for retirees 75 years in advance. It just makes no sense. And that's $20 billion, billion with a B, in the last 4 years, last 4 fiscal years, have been taken out of the revenue stream and put away instead of being able to use that for operating costs. Otherwise, the Postal Service would be in the black.
Who sponsored that bill? Any idea?
No, I don't know.
Do you know?
I don't remember.
It's Republican-sponsored.
But like Rich said, we actually would have made a $611 million profit. Even though the recession is terrible, $611 million profit over the last 4 years if it wasn't for this overpayment.
What's a first-class stamp is now, what, 44 cents?
It just went up a penny to 45 cents about 2 weeks ago, I guess.
About 2 weeks ago, went to 44. All right, I think I still have an old sheet of 44s I've been using. They haven't bounced them back to me yet, so thank you for that penny you guys have been extending to me.
But actually, that's a very little small amount compared to, look at the price of gas, how much it just went up. What goes up a penny these days?
Hey,
and the other thing is it's the cheapest postage in the industrialized world, and the Postal Service in the United States is the most efficient postal service in the industrialized world.
hey, Postal Service is the best deal going, man. You can mail a letter to California before the problems you've been having recently. You usually get there within the week, and it cost you 44 cents now, you're telling me, 45 cents.
Yeah.
How can you beat that?
Yeah, it's amazing. What can you buy for 45 cents this day? A candy bar? Stick of gum?
Nope.
Man, I don't know.
Can't do that.
I'll tell you this, I have noticed over the last couple of months, the guy who delivers the mail to my house used to be able to talk for a couple of minutes. We'd talk football, golf, whatever. And now every time he sees me, he goes, I can't talk. They got me. I just picked up 2 more routes I got to do, and I just don't have time to stop and chat. That's a shame.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's harder than ever, and because the country's grown. We have more addresses to cover every day than we've ever had before, and we've actually downsized. About 6 or 7 years ago, we had 750,000 employees. We're now doing the same job, actually more than the same job, with only 550,000.
And this is just one on my little pet peeve list. I would remind people that of those 100,000 that are intended to be laid off, many of them are veterans. So if you say you support our troops, you got to support them when they come home and make sure that they have jobs. And a lot of our Postal Service workers are veterans.
That's absolutely right. Statistically, about 25% of postal workers have been vets.
So, Tom and Rich, what's the answer here? What's your next step to try to get something done about this, if there is one?
Well, we're holding 2 town hall meetings on Tuesday, March 13th, from 7 to 9 p.m. It's at the New Market Volunteer Fire Department. That's to the east of Frederick.
Yeah, it's right off exit 62 on I-70.
Right. And then the second one's going to be on Thursday, March 15th, from 7 to 9 at the Williamsport Volunteer Fire Department, which is real close there to Martinsburg, just right up the road.
Just up I-81.
Right.
All right, gentlemen. If you can get me something, Rich, maybe you can send me an email on those specific times, dates, and locations. We'll be sure and get the word out.
Well, your listeners can hear about it and find out about us on Facebook. We're at Save Your Local Post Office.
Save Your Local Post Office on Facebook.
Right.
Very good. Gentlemen, thank you both very much for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Tom Dodge and Rich Shelley, U.S. Postal Service, Local 181.